Good day everyone. Today we're going to tackle about the principles and philosophies of Philippine education. I am Elizabeth A. Casilian Jr., your discussant for this topic. These are the learning objectives of the subject matter, and at the end of this discussion, students will be able to identify and describe the core principles and philosophies of Philippine education. Second is to appreciate and recognize the diverse cultural backgrounds of their peers, understanding how these differences enrich the learning environment. And lastly is to demonstrate the use of educational technology tools in presentations that highlight Philippine educational philosophies. So what is education? The word education is derived from the Latin words educo, where e means out of and yoku means I lead. Education is the process of learning or teaching and the knowledge gained through this process. We all know that education serves as a stepping stone for our personal development, social progress, and economic growth. But what makes education effective? This brings us to our next focus, the principles of education. Principles of education are guidelines that help teachers and students make the most of the learning experience. So let us understand how these principles helps educators create a meaningful learning experience and addresses the diverse needs of the students. Like it refers to how a teacher assesses their students, how learner-centered approach is observed, and also to include inclusiveness in a classroom. So here are the 7 principles of education. First is to encourage contact between students and faculty. The contact between students and teachers are vital to the student's success. One of the main reasons students leave school is the feeling of isolation that they experience. This principle helps building and strengthening the bond with the students and the teacher, which may result to have a better interaction when it comes to classroom interaction. And this principle also helps students to gain confidence through the guidance and support of the teacher. Next is the develop reciprocity and cooperation among students. When students are encouraged to work as a team, more learning takes place. Characteristics of good learning are collaborative and social, not competitive and isolated. So, this principle can be achieved through group projects, peer mentoring, and collaborative learning activities, where the students work together to solve problems and share their knowledge to each other. By encouraging them to share and rely on each other's strength, they are not just only developing interpersonal skills, but also support environment in their educational experience. Third is to encourage active learning. Learning is an active process. Students are not able to learn much by only sitting in classes, listening to teachers. They must be able to talk about what they are learning, write about it, relate it to their experiences, and apply it to their daily lives. Students need to make learning a part of themselves. Active learning involves engaging students directly in the learning process through discussions, problem solving, collaborative projects, and hands-on activities. And this approach promotes critical thinking and retention by encouraging students to apply their knowledge and interact with the material actively. Next is to give prompt feedback. By knowing what you know and do not know gives a focus to learning. In order for students to benefit from courses, they appropriate they need appropriate feedback on your performance. Within the classroom, students need frequent opportunities to perform and receive suggestions for improvement. Providing timely and constructive feedback helps the students to understand their strengths and areas for improvement. The prompt feedback encourages the continuous learning that allows the students to make adjustments and enhance their understanding of the material while it is still fresh in their minds. Emphasize time on task. Learning needs time and energy. Efficient time management skills are critical for students. By allowing realistic amounts of time, effective learning for students and effective teaching for faculty are able to occur. Focusing on time on task means ensuring that students spend sufficient time engaged in meaningful learning activities. By minimizing distractions and maximizing productive work time, the educators can enhance the students' focus and facilitate deeper learning and the mastery of the content. Next is to communicate high expectations. Expect more and you will get it. Expecting students to perform well becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy when teachers and institutions hold high standards and make extra efforts. In this principle, we are not pressuring the students, but we are um, motivating them to set goals for themselves. Setting high expectations for all students communicates the belief that they can succeed. When educators express confidence in their students' abilities and provide necessary support, it motivates the students to strive for excellence and foster a growth mindset. Lastly is to respect diverse talents and ways of learning. There are many different ways to learn, and no two people learn the same way. Students bring different talents and learning styles to the classroom. Students need the opportunity to show their talents and learn in ways that work for them. Then, they can be guided into new ways of learning that are not as easy for them. We must consider our students because they are unique. They are unique for one another. They have different strengths and weaknesses as they go to the school. Some of them are fast learners and some of them are not. That is why recognizing and valuing diverse talents and learning styles is crucial for creating an inclusive learning environment. By accommodating different approaches to learning, such as the visual, auditory, and kinesthetics methods, educators can engage all students effectively and help them reach their full potential. And now let's proceed to the philosophical foundation of education. So, these are the philosophical foundations of the Philippine education from then up to now. First is the pre-Spanish period, before 1521. During this period, education was informal, unstructured, and devoid of methods. Children were provided more vocational training and less academics, the three R's, which are reading, writing, and arithmetic, by their parents and in the houses of tribal tutors. And the type of education during this period is informal practicing training. During the pre-Spanish education in the Philippines, it was characterized by an informal community-based system that emphasized the transmission of knowledge through oral traditions. Knowledge, skills, and values were passed down from elders to younger generation through storytelling, rituals, and practical demonstrations, ensuring that essential life skills like farming, fishing, and craftsmanship were imparted. So, education in this period is more focused in their survivability. Examples of these are the Babaylans, which are the members from the community that is responsible for maintaining their cultural practices and spiritual well-being. The community played an important role with families and local leaders collaborating to teach children not only practical skills but also moral and ethical values. And that is what happened in the pre-Spanish period. Next is the Spanish regime from 1521 to 1896. During this period, the tribal tutors were replaced by the Spanish missionaries, and education during this period was inadequate, suppressed, and controlled. Establishment of normal schools for male teachers under the supervision of the Jesuits. And the type of education during this era is formal religious education. During the Spanish regime in the Philippines, education underwent significant changes with the introduction of formal schooling and the establishment of the Catholic Church as the primary educational authority. The Spanish colonial government implemented a system that combined religious instruction with basic literacy, primarily through the establishment of parochial schools run by missionaries. Education was largely focused on teaching Christian values and the Spanish language, often at the expense of indigenous cultures and languages. Next is the American era, from 1898 to 1935. The education during this period should be universal and free, regardless of sex, age, religion, and socioeconomic status of the individual, and carried out by the civilian teachers of English called Thomasites. And the type of education during this era is formal education, which focuses on three R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic. During the American era, the Philippines saw the introduction of the public education system that is modeled after the American educational framework. And the government established free and compulsory education with an emphasis on English as the medium instruction. And the establishment of the public school and the training of the Filipino teachers were significant developments. A concrete example is the creation of the Philippine Normal School in 1901 that aimed at training teachers to promote a modern curriculum that included subjects like science, mathematics, and civics, which reflected American ideals of democracy and citizenship. Next is the Japanese occupation from 1941 to 1944. Education was at its nadir, or was at its lowest point, and was used as an instrument for indoctrinating the people to embrace Japanese ideologies. An educational system under the Japanese military government were articulated in Executive Order No. 2 issued on February 17, 1942 by the Commander-in-Chief of the Japanese Imperial Army. And during this period, the type of education is formal and vocational education. During this era, the Japanese occupation brought disruption to the educational system. It is because Japanese implemented a curriculum that focused on the Japanese culture and language, that also promotes nationalism and loyalty to the Japanese emperor. So, schools were often used for propaganda purposes, and many traditional subjects were replaced with the military training and indoctrination. That's why the education system became a tool for shaping young minds to align with Japanese imperial interests. So, English and other influences were systematically removed, and subjects like history and geography were rewritten to reflect Japan's dominance. That's why the students were required to learn Nihongo and participated in the physical drills and also undergo military training to introduce discipline and obedience. So the shift in the education was not just only suppressed local cultures but also aimed to create a generation that is loyal to Japan. So next is the post-World War II era from 1945 to 1970s. So during this era, it focuses on rebuilding and modernizing the educational system with the establishment of public schools to increase access. And the type of education is formal education that emphasize academic and vocational training. So after World War II, the Philippines faced the challenge of rebuilding its educational system. So the government sought to restore and expand access to education, emphasizing the need for more educational facilities and trained teachers. So this period became the introduction of new educational policies that promotes nationalism and cultural heritage. And one of the best example of this is the establishment of the development of the Department of Education in 1947, which aimed to oversee and improve the educational system, ensuring that it aligned with the country's post-war goals of recovery and development. And next is the martial law and the Marcos era from 1972 to 1986. So the education were centralized that promotes nationalism and martial law ideologies. Curriculum changes to include values education, and the type of education were formal education with a focus on civic and moral values. So during the martial law, um, under Ferdinand Marcos, the education was heavily influenced by political ideology, and the government sought to control the curriculum and promote loyalty to the regime, often suppressing the dissenting voices. And the educational policies were emphasized to vocational training in order to support national development while limiting academic freedom. So the concrete example of this is the implementation of the National College Entrance Examination or the NCEE in 1973, which is standardized college admissions and align educational outcomes with the government objectives that reflects the regime focus on control and uniformity in education. So next is the post-EDSA revolution from 1986 to 2013, which emphasizes on decentralization and reforms to improve access and relevance alongside initiatives to cater to marginalized groups. And the types of education during this period is the combination of formal, informal, and non-formal education. So for information, the difference between non-formal and informal education is the non-formal education is a structured educational activity outside of the formal school system, like swimming lessons or community sport programs and workshops, while informal education is a lifelong process of learning from the daily experiences, like learning to cook from our parents. Um, Following the EDSA revolution in 1986, the Philippine education system underwent reforms aimed to promote democracy, academic freedom, and critical thinking. So this period focused on decentralizing education and enhancing the quality of learning. So if the martial law period focused on centralizing educational system, the EDSA revolution is on decentralized education. An example of this is the introduction of the new curriculum in the late 1980s, which emphasized student-centered learning and the inclusion of Filipino culture and history in the curriculum that foster a sense of national identity and civic responsibility. Next is the K-12 program from 2013 up to the present. The K-12 pro- the K-12 program implemented in 2012 um, extended the basic education from 10 to 12 years, focusing on academic, technical, and vocational education, promoting lifelong learning and adaptability to global standards. And the type of education during this is the enhanced basic education. So, the K-12 program aimed to enhance the Philippine educational system by adding 2 additional years to the basic education curriculum. And this reform was designed to provide students with a more comprehensive education, preparing them for higher education, um, higher education for vocational training or the employment. And the K-12 aims to make the Filipino students globally competitive by improving their skills in science, math, and linguistics. Concrete example of this is the program of the integration of specialized tracks in senior high school, such as academic, technical, vocational livelihood, and arts and design, that allow students to tailor their education to their interests and career goals, thereby addressing the skills gap in the workforce. So, in conclusion, the evolution of the education in the Philippines is deeply rooted in the philosophical principles that reflect the nation's cultural identity, moral development, and the democratic ideals. Throughout its history, the education has been shaped by various influences that contributes to a collective understanding of what it means to be a Filipino. The emphasis on preserving the cultural heritage, fostering ethical values, and promoting critical thinking highlights the commitment to the holistic development of our education. So, as the educational system continues to adapt to the challenges, these philosophical foundations remain essential in guiding its direction and purpose, or serving as a roadmap to ensure that education serves not only as a means of acquiring knowledge but also as a tool for personal and national growth. And that would be all. Thank you. So, this ends our discussion. Thank you.